Hi, teachers. I'm Walter from EOT in Brazil, and this is my partner.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bruno Bukkake. Welcome.
Today, we're here to get started with our second course, our second free mini course, and we're going to be talking a little bit about planning, right? Which is something that usually interests every teacher, and it's the subject matter of many doubts out there. I'm pretty sure of that. Bruno, what do you say? We could start talking about one of the things that matters the most, which will be the lesson type.
Yeah.
Yes.
What you see in the screen, what you see on the screen, everyone, is a lesson plan template. This is a way of organizing your lesson plan. I got this from my CELTA some years ago, and then I adapted it. So this is not exactly what you're going to see in the CELTA if you decide to take it, but it's a way to organize steps. Walter, do you write down all your lesson plans like this in a
No.
document? You don't?
No,
Yeah,
no,
me neither.
no. I haven't in a long time. Yes.
Yeah.
It's well. First things first. It's. I think it's important to mention that even though we're using something that could help you with your CELTA if you're going to take your CELTA, but it's not a prep course for a CELTA first because that does not exist. But I mean, I guess when I first started like working as a teacher, I would write down a lesson plan, really paper, pen, and just write down the stages of the lesson. I should add that I had some knowledge of staging a lesson, like what procedures I should do, because I had training to be a teacher before I
You
started
started
teaching.
teaching. Oh, that's a
Yes.
privilege. That's
I
not
had
what happens to most people.
to most people, but I took the TESOL before I started teaching, so I did know.
Okay.
I knew how to put things together in the order of a lesson, that kind of thing. But I know that for most people, that's not what happens. So I think that the wise thing that you could do if you're a novice teacher is to get your course books. Maybe you're teaching at a franchise school or something, and then you want to write down what you're going to do into steps. Is that what you used to do, Bruno?
Yes. When I started teaching, I had no training. I had read the How to Teach English book by Jeremy Harmer. So I would organize my lesson into engage, study, activate. We're definitely going to talk about ESA in lesson 4 or lesson 5. So bear with us, people.
Yes.
But I think that writing the lesson plan, and specifically this format, is a step towards being able to plan lessons without necessarily putting them on paper, right? Because I don't think it's practical to write down all your lesson plans in this much detail if you're teaching 30-40 hours a week, right? You'll be working 70 hours a week. Yes.
You just can't plan every lesson like that.
Oh no. Yeah.
But if you were teaching, if you're just starting and you have, like, I don't know, if you're teaching 12, 20 hours a week, I would recommend that you still write things, maybe not in as much detail, and definitely not everything that you will see in the template. But there are things that I think would be important. But you will see them as we go through them throughout the course.
Perhaps one lesson a week, maybe, to put it on the template, and then
practice as well.
It is.
Yes.
It is. All right.
All right. Shall we start with lesson type?
Okay.
Yes.
What do you write on the lesson type?
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Well,
it is.
imagine that you open your course book. I have one right here. Let me get one. Bruno, what do you prefer, face to face or live?
Life.
Okay, so I'm gonna open it at a random page here. It's okay, and then you have this.
Okay, that's a writing class, a reading
Yeah.
class.
Okay, you have a text, and then you
Mhm.
have something on top that says reading, and then you
Okay.
have 1, 2, 3 exercises for reading. What lesson
Mhm.
type would that be
Mhm.
then?
Yeah.
Clearly, we have a reading lesson in that
Mhm.
case. So you have your lesson type there. You're gonna do
Mhm.
a reading lesson.
Mhm.
Let's break them down into smaller units, let's say, right? So I guess we could write down, what is reading? Is it a system or a skill?
Mhm. It's a skill.
So we have a
Mhm.
skill lesson and we have systems lesson, right? Then you can break down into even smaller units. You have reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Those are the skills. If you're gonna do reading and listening, you're doing a receptive skills lesson. If you're doing writing and speaking, you're doing a productive lesson, productive skills lesson. And they are very different.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
very, very different,
Mhm.
right? Even though students should talk and speak and have opportunities to communicate in all of them. But
Oh yes.
let's say, yeah, but the procedures would be
Mhm.
entirely different. Not entirely different, but it's still very different, right?
I think what matters the most here is the focus you're giving and what you want to achieve, right? So as you said, in a reading class, students are going to interact. They're going to speak. There's going to be lots of production, lots of speaking, maybe some writing in the lesson. But your objective in a reading class is to develop reading skills. Yes, they will speak.
Absolutely.
They might learn a word or two, but it's reading is the focus, right?
Yes. And then we have the systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pronunciation.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you're gonna
You
start with
you
grammar.
decided
Start
there.
with grammar, no problem. Pronunciation,
Uh-huh.
because we just came from there. Yeah, yeah. Grammar,
Mhm.
pronunciation, lexis, and discourse.
Yeah, this is vocabulary, right? Lexis is a broader term for
Yeah.
vocabulary.
Mhm.
And functions, right?
Functions, exponents.
Yeah.
There's some.
But this
Um,
what was this what you said? Grammar, pronunciation, lexis, and functions?
I mentioned discourse, but it's
Okay.
still fine. It's still a part of it.
Okay.
So cool.
Okay. Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
then
people, don't
Bruno
worry,
just can.
we're going to go back in all of these skills and all of these systems. So our first course was on how to teach pronunciation, right? So
Yes.
in the future, Walter and I are going to have a recorded course on how to teach all of these skills and all of these systems. So if you're worried about perhaps functions or discourse because they're a bit less frequent um, in common tongue, don't worry, we're going to see this in the future.
It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, it is.
Gonna be fine. Yeah.
Okay,
Uh, and well, can I make the connection right now to the
sure.
next part? Yeah.
Mhm,
Okay. So remember the book again. It's a reading lesson.
mhm,
So your goal is to develop, and I should stress that you we don't really say you're gonna teach a skill. You're gonna develop a skill. Well, there are things you can read about that, but basically we should say we're going to develop the skill instead of we're going to teach that skill.
mhm,
Might not be a mistake, but anyway. So let's say that the skill you want to develop is reading.
mhm,
It is what you're teaching, it is what is in your course book, it is what the institution where you work expects you to do, because some institutions, let's face it, they want you to follow a course book, and there are things you need to do even though you might not have to do everything that is in the book accordingly.
mhm.
So your aim, and now we're gonna dive into that for that lesson, is that you have to help your students develop the skill of reading. So your main aim is that skill. It is reading,
Mhm.
right? So for a main aim, we could say, well, this text is about architecture, for example. So by the end of this lesson, learners, students will be able to read and understand a text, a complex text about, I don't know, let's see, mm,
Architecture, for example, right?
architecture. I was gonna say something a little more specific, perhaps, like uh, the colonial
Oh,
architecture
okay.
of blah 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 city, something like that.
Okay.
But it's
Uh,
fine.
okay, about the
It's still
architecture of
broad.
Brasilia. Huh.
There we go. There we go. That's good. And then, but what to do that? They will exercise other skills, and that's something that you were gonna touch upon when you talk about subsidiary aims. So they are going to be doing the reading. Bruno, what do you think could be a subsidiary aim for that same lesson?
Hmm.
Would you
Okay.
prefer to have something as a system or another skill?
But I think that it might be interesting, and it's quite common to have reading classes that are associated with vocabulary lessons, right? So sometimes
Great.
the vocabulary comes embedded in the text. So
Just so you know, in this
this
book,
is the case. Yeah.
this is the case.
Okay.
You have idioms
Idioms. Okay.
coming with
So
it. So yeah,
to work with idioms regarding cities. I can't really think of any though.
okay.
Uh to work
Regarding
with
architecture,
to work with
we could be
to work with adjectives regarding cities.
yes, or you could. I'm gonna give you another example. Let's say
Mhm.
you wanna say that it's grammar. So by the end of this lesson, students will be better able to use adjectival um, clauses. What's the other name for relative clauses? For
Mhm.
example, uh, to describe or to provide extra information about cities.
Mhm. Mhm.
That would be another one. Another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I think it's interesting that um, if we flip these two, you change the lesson type, right? So if,
Absolutely.
for example, the main aim is to work on adjectives to describe cities, this is a vocabulary lesson, right? And
It
then
becomes a system
your
class. Yeah.
subsidiary aim might be to read the text about the architecture of Brasilia, right? So it's
And
it
there we
is
go.
really a matter of focus, right?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um,
Great.
can we have another subsidiary aim here? Because we usually have like two, usually,
Maybe
two,
speaking.
yeah, maybe to talk about the architecture of your city,
Great. Mhm.
of your city. Yeah.
Do you want to write down that one about grammar as well? Because that could be another one if that was the
Okay.
case of your material, but it is an example. Students will be able to use relative clauses to provide extra information about their cities, for example.
Extra information about their cities. Mhm.
Or essential information because it depends on the type of relative
Sure.
clause. But there you go.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
then the subsidiary aims for this to read a text about the architecture of a city. Um,
Great.
mhm. What would and then here in target sentence and vocabulary, this is the target vocabulary or obviously target sentence that you expect students to use throughout and by the end of the lesson, right? So
Let's get an example. Let's get an
mhm,
example from the ones that we have in the book. Oh, yeah. This book, in this case, has both grammar and vocabulary
in a
for
reading
this reading
class.
lesson.
Yes.
I would probably not do both at the same
Yeah.
lesson. I would do reading and vocabulary or reading and grammar,
Because it's
right?
actually three, right? Because it's
Yes.
reading,
And
it's vocabulary and grammar. It's a lot. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And then um, it has, for example, let me see, past participle as adjectives. So you will have, for example, a well-known city, well-known, and a proven method, or it has been proved. Proved would be a past participle used as an adjective.
Mhm.
So another one, or folded motors. Folded
What?
is a past part. Folded, yes.
Motors, like
Motors,
this?
yes.
Oh
Yes,
my.
just like that. So yes, and then there would be more, but I think as an
Mhm,
example, it works.
mhm,
And then if you want examples for vocabulary, we could go with a drop of water, a stroke of luck,
mhm,
a shred of evidence,
mhm,
uh, a glimmer of hope,
mhm,
a flash of inspiration.
mhm,
Those are examples from the very lesson that we used in that book.
mhm,
So, easy vocabulary, easy grammar, then you have
mhm,
your target language,
mhm.
right?
And in
I
case
should.
it's grammar here,
Mhm.
I think say you're teaching present simple to talk about routines or the future with will. I believe it's a good idea that you choose example sentences. It's kind of the sentences that you want to hear your students produce. So you would have them in all forms, right? So I will travel, will they travel, and I won't travel, right? So
Yeah.
sentences that you expect your students to be able to produce throughout the lesson and
Yes.
then by the end of it as well. Yeah.
By the way, if you were ever gonna take a course like CELTA, then your target language analysis is much more complex than just these
Oh
examples.
yes.
You
Mhm.
would write down the
Yeah.
examples and then you would exploit them.
Mhm.
Let's say uh, you're gonna go very deep into
Mhm.
those. Like you're gonna talk about syntax, you're gonna talk about pronunciation,
Mhm.
and you're gonna talk about meaning,
Yeah.
right? Especially because of something that is right down there, which is called MAPF.
Oh
Here
yeah.
we have MFP.
MFP.
Fine,
Yeah.
right? It's you need to cover meaning, pronunciation, and form and appropriacy. So because of that, you need to know. Let's just say that if you're taking one of those courses, you need to show what you know about that
Mhm.
target
Mhm.
language. So,
Mhm.
and as a teacher, let's say nobody's going to observe your lesson, you still have to know what you're going to teach and quite well, right? So
Mhm.
you are a good language model for your students as well,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
when you're teaching, you need to cover those three areas: meaning,
Mhm.
pronunciation, and form. So the analysis of the language is due.
Yeah. And folks, just an observation on CELTA now. Um, there's a lot of terror around CELTA and Delta. Uh, don't trust the terror. It's not. CELTA
Oh,
is a lot of work, but that's it. It's a lot of work. Here in Brazil, the 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 number of people who fail the CELTA is nearly zero, like in the country, right? So it's very, very, very small. It's not a course that's going to fail you. So, oh, but I don't know how to analyze language. They will teach you, right? You're going to have a session on that. You're going to have feedback on that. It's a course that will teach you how to do this stuff. So don't be afraid. It's a very
I,
nice
I
course.
I would
Yeah.
I would just add one thing. CELTA is a course that kind of makes sure that you know your stuff. You
Mhm,
know the essentials of teaching.
mhm,
Maybe we could put it
mhm,
that way.
mhm. It is.
And let's say you don't, you
They
will
will teach
know.
you. Yeah. Mhm,
They will teach you.
mhm,
Yes, I had wonderful tutors for my CELTA.
mhm.
I don't know about you,
Same.
Bruno, but I expect the answer is
Same.
similar.
Oh, yes. I had
Yes.
classes with Vinicius Nobre and Ricardo Barros.
Yes, they're great. I had classes with Maria Elena and
Oh,
Elcio.
wow. Elcio.
Yes, Elcio.
Oh,
Elcio was
wow.
my tutor.
You're very lucky
Yeah,
as well.
yes, just great, man.
Okay. This next
Yes.
part here, people, it's something that is not in the CELTA template. So this is something that I added. And I think it's an interesting step. Sometimes I used to put this at the end of the lesson plan, but I preferred having it right after the beginning because when I put all these lesson plans in my folder, it would be easier to check the progress of the lessons having it on the first page. So it's
Great,
an analysis
great.
for after the lesson, right? So did I achieve, did actually, oh, we skipped personal aims. Sorry.
Oh yes, oh
Um,
yes. Well, let's say your school institution where you work, that somebody's going to come and observe your lessons. They're probably going to give you feedback on what they observed, which is always a given. It's a gift. Afterwards, they will probably give you some areas where you could do a better job. Oh, okay, so you're not using CCQs in your lesson. You were not you were your TTT, teacher talking time, is too high.
mhm,
So you're talking more than the students. That could be a personal aim, which is to reduce it.
mhm,
So anything in the lesson that could be better is your personal aim. As simple as that.
mhm. Yeah. So to reduce my teacher talking time, um,
To be more.
I have at the time a student in class who is clearly more proficient than the others, and I have one who's clearly less proficient than the others. So part of my aims are my personal aims are always to challenge Mateus enough. This is the more proficient student, and to scaffold the lesson enough for Luis, which is the one
Oh,
that,
scaffold. That's a beautiful
yeah,
word.
yeah.
And not entirely what it means for people in
No.
in the regular
Uh,
world out
s-
there. So
all
Bruno,
right.
explanations are
Scaffold.
due.
How can I put this?
uh,
Imagine you're learning how to ride a bike, right? So you sit on the bike and you have those training wheels, right? So you learn how to sit on the bike, how to hold it's not a steering wheel, but the steering bar. And then you
yes,
pedal and you learn how to balance on top of the bike with the training wheels. It's quite easy because with the training wheels, you can sit on the bike and you can have lunch on a bike, right? It will not uh, tip to one side or the other. And then after you get more confident riding the bike, someone, the person teaching you or yourself, will remove one of the training wheels. And then you'll ride the bike with only one of the training wheels up to a point that you will remove the second training wheel. And then you will ride the bike on your own. This process of slowly making things more challenging and removing support so that students can act more freely, more creatively in a more personalized manner is called scaffolding.
brilliant analogy.
You know, thank you.
Great,
I'm
that's great.
smart sometimes. Okay,
Well,
so personal aims. Yeah. think that's
I know, I really like that. Anyway, I guess we can move on into lesson procedures.
okay. And then we'll come
Yeah.
back here. Mhm.
Yes. Okay. For lesson procedures, now we get to the part, and I think this is like this is going to be very interesting because you see, most of the things that we just analyzed are things that if you were not an experienced teacher or you never worked at a place that asked you to do those things, you were probably unaware of those things.
Mhm.
You will do them when you take a course such
Mhm.
as a CELTA, or when you start working at a place that asks you to do those things.
Mhm.
But let's say here's your book, go teach, which is the reality of many people out there. We get to the point where this is the thing that you can do on your own, right? So let's say open your book, and then you have that reading lesson we had in here. Now you have to write down the procedures. Let's think of this. Okay, so Bruno, you teach tomorrow. You teach on Mondays and Wednesdays, and tomorrow there is this reading lesson,
Mhm.
but you won't be able to go. What would you tell the teacher who's going to replace you? So let's say
Mhm.
you're going to write something in a way that this person who's going to replace you would do exactly what you would do because you want them to do that.
Mhm.
So we could write down those procedures as such, like
Mhm.
the way that we want another person to deliver our lesson for us.
Mhm.
So I guess we can break them into the stages first and then
Okay.
go into each procedure. What do you think?
Mhm. All right.
All right.
Yep. Um,
So in a reading lesson,
mhm.
in a reading lesson, let's say a 45-minute lesson, a 1 hour and a half lesson,
1 hour, 60 minutes, maybe. Yeah.
1 hour. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So the first stage, and now it comes to something very interesting in terms of terminology. Are you gonna go ESA or are you gonna go more CELTA like? Because
Um,
is it gonna be engagement
engaging.
or
Yeah.
lead in?
I usually go with lead in.
Mhm. Let's follow
Because
the
I
CELTA
think,
then.
yeah, because I think ESA um is a less specific way of
Yes.
describing the stages, right? So engaging and study and activate, which is ESA, um, their definitions are broader and more flexible, right? So
Yes. Yes.
in stage, you're going to name the stage of the lesson. There are
Mhm.
stages that there are how can I say, like consecrated by literature and in training stages, in training courses, but you can pretty much just call your stages what you want to call them. For example, this can be an introduction to the lesson, right? So I'm
There we go.
starting the
Mhm.
lesson. Yeah, if you're taking a CELTA or a Delta or another course, you're gonna want to use the names that they give the stages, right? So an
Lead
introduction
in.
is often
Exactly.
called a lead-in. And
If you're taking the TESOL, which is commonly referred, it really refers to a lot of Jeremy Harmer's material. So
mhm,
you would call that engagement because of the
mhm,
ESA. So it is
mhm,
engagement, study focus, study practice. So in the CELTA, you're gonna go more. Just to mention here, Jim Scrivener, Thornbury. Anyways, you
mhm,
would probably have lead in and then the other stages,
mhm,
but I guess that they do usually have the same aim.
mhm,
So they are not entirely different, you see.
mhm,
But yes, Bruno is right, and they're broader. I would say they're
mhm,
broader. Yeah.
mhm,
So we are not gonna go through the whole planning of a lesson because this is part of our course. So it's just so you get the point of. But we are gonna write the first part just so we have an example, right, Bruno?
mhm. Yep.
Good. All right. So we have a lead in. The aim of a lead in is to engage students and set the context of a lesson. There we go.
Mhm.
Bruno, how long do you think you need to do that?
5 minutes. If it's more than that, I think we're because the thing with
That's
lead
not a
in,
lead in.
yeah, because the thing
Yes.
with lead in is that we're not teaching anything, right? So students are not learning anything here. So the more
If
time you
you're teaching
spend,
language,
yeah,
if you are teaching language, that's not a lead in.
uh-huh,
Simple as that.
yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Or
So
practicing any target language,
mhm,
not a lead in,
mhm,
right?
right. So more than 5 minutes, you're wasting your students' precious time in the lesson. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm,
And it's not the appropriate time to do so, right? So
mhm,
things have a sequence,
mhm,
and there are reasons for that, right?
mhm,
So and then we move on to interaction. Let's say in this part, are you going to be interacting with the students, or are the students going to be interacting with each other? So in this case, I guess we could write down S dash S, because you want students to start the lesson
mhm,
communicating already, right? So
mhm,
SS, you want students and students. And if you were thinking of taking, again, I'm gonna mention the CELTA or TESOL, get ready to use a lot of acronyms.
mhm.
Okay,
Oh yes.
so there are thousands of them,
Yeah.
right? uh, I
I
should
had a
mention this when I
friend.
start.
I had a
uh
friend who made a dictionary, like a glossary for the
Good idea.
acronyms. Yeah,
Right.
I
Was
think
that
it's a
whenever I
great
start
idea.
talking, like I start talking ELT,
Mhm,
ELT is another
right.
acronym. Next to my girlfriend, she wants to kill me. It's like,
Like,
what? Like,
use the goddamn words.
use the
Right.
goddamn word, yes.
Right. So people,
And you,
interaction patterns, we can go with student student, right? You will also see this as pair work, right? You can
work,
have students and students, so this is group work, right?
teacher, students,
uh, Teacher to student, and teacher to students if teacher's
and
talking to all
and the
students.
opposite.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is whole group, right? Teacher to
Whole group,
students, right?
yeah.
We say whole
Mhm.
group. This can be like maybe you're modeling with one student, right? So it's
Yes.
teacher to one student, right? You're doing activity to show the whole class, right? So the key here, and obviously, if you're writing your lesson plan, you can say pair work, right? You can, yeah. You don't have to use the acronyms and the codes. The idea is just that when you think of each stage of your lesson, you also think of about how students are going to how interaction is going to happen, right? So if you're going to be involved, if it's going to be pair work, in trios, in groups, right? It's a good idea to decide before the lesson.
Good. Good.
Mhm.
Yes. And then we move on to procedures. And in this part, you remember what I said. Let's say you are not going to be able to be there. Somebody else is going to be teaching your lesson. Now you write down the procedures to which you want that teacher to do in your place. So I would write down something like that. Well, first I could write down the book and the page that I want to use, or maybe if I have slides, if I have flip charts or something, the number of the flip chart, the slides
Mhm.
that I want, or the page of the book that I want, I would write that on top.
Mhm.
And then I
Oh,
would
and
just
we,
write down oh yes, we didn't mention
yeah,
the materials.
should go back
Yes,
to
yes.
materials later. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes. Well, anyway, and then I would probably write down teacher starts the lesson by
Mhm.
showing students a group of pictures from A to D. And there you go. And then teacher says or asks, and then you're basically going to be writing what the other person is going to be doing, right? What do you see in these situations? That remember that a lead in is something that is going to be personal. The student needs to be expressing some sort of personal opinion. All right. So I would involve something that makes them say to speak, to voice their minds.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And mind you, that goes regardless of the level. If your student is A1, a lead-in could be 2 minutes and they would say their opinion about something very simple the best way they can.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, because again, what's the point of this moment? Engaging students and setting the context of the lesson,
Yes.
right? So, I think this all comes together when you think of what you're going to do, because what you're going to do is it's something that teachers often do when they're planning a lesson, right? This is you could say that this is the core of lesson planning, is what's going to happen in the class, right?
Bruno, Bruno,
Yeah,
may I share my screen for a second?
sure.
I
And
wanna I wanna show them something. I wanna show them. No, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't. Something CELTA like.
oh, we're going to we can use the we can use examples in the following lessons when we talk about the
Yes,
frameworks. It
yes,
will be
yes.
very nice
Yeah,
to
yeah,
have them.
yeah, yeah.
So what I think CELTA does, and maybe what I think, in my opinion, the biggest takeaway of this course is not only knowing how to plan a lesson, because you definitely know how to plan a lesson, or most likely know how to plan a lesson. But I believe that the key thing in lesson planning is this part, is understanding why you're doing this activity and that other activity, right? I think
That
this is
is
the pulo do gato from an experienced teacher to a proficient teacher, right?
that's where the essentials are.
Mhm.
Uh, of knowing what to do and when to do, or basically I look at a book and that's like, okay, you don't, when you're more experienced, you're not gonna go like, okay, I'm gonna I've been there. Okay, I've been there. Bruno has been there. Beginning of the career, just look at the book. Okay, I'm gonna do this and that, but I need to write it.
Uh-huh.
I need to write it because I don't want to forget, or
Post-its
because you
on
don't
the
feel as
book.
confident yet, right?
Mhm.
Yes, and then, but after some time you don't really need to write those things. You just basically look at the book.
Mhm.
Never take things for granted. You are
Mhm.
always going to
Mhm.
plan lessons. I still plan
Mhm.
every lesson I teach.
Mhm.
I never get in the classroom unprepared. That's not a good plan, right?
It's not.
uh
No
yeah,
plan is never a good
you
plan.
have to. I mean, you could, but I think that you, well, sometimes you just have ideas,
Mhm.
right? Things come to you and sometimes they're brilliant.
Mhm.
And I mean, regardless of how well planned that lesson was, I just don't think it's a good idea to count on those,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You should plan your lessons, make sure that everything is in place. I myself, I think I tend to overdo it. I have more things planned than the time I have to do things.
Mhm.
So well, not anymore, but I did for a long time. Like I will
Mhm.
have like many activities. Even though I knew I wouldn't have time to do all of them, I'll have to select them.
Mhm.
Especially when we get to one of the stages that is called practice.
Mhm.
But we'll talk about that later.
Mhm. Yeah, but I believe this is very relevant, Walter, is knowing how many activities you're going to fit, right? So this shows under time, and then you can count. Ish, my dog wants to
Mhm.
participate in the lesson. uh so this is where timing comes into play, right? So knowing,
Yes.
okay, so 5 minutes is possible, it's feasible for this, but maybe 10 minutes for an activity in which all students are talking together, and then you're going to give them feedback within these 10 minutes. Maybe that's not enough, right? So
Yeah.
experience will get you there.
Yeah.
We added this space here for observation and suggestions. This is for either you, teacher, teaching the class, to write down some of your observations after the lesson, right? Or maybe during the lesson, some things that, oh, okay, I didn't have enough time for this, I had to adapt. Or for someone who's observing you to write some
Anyway, it's going to be
suggestions.
used for reflection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, it'll be used for your reflection upon your teaching,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Can we cover this quickly? The quick lesson analysis.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's say, Bruno, if you can scroll up so we can see the main aims. Let's say you observed that lesson, or you taught that lesson, and at the end of that lesson, were the aims achieved? Uh, can students actually read and understand a text about architecture of Brasilia?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so that would contemplate the achievement of the aims or the goals, if you want to call it them that way.
Mm-hmm.
Then we move on into student centeredness. Yeah, that would take a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we have a lot to talk in there,
Yeah.
right? But basically, let's say, was that lesson teacher center, book centered, slide center, or student center?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning students really were the center of the lesson, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was a lesson made for the students, and the
Mm-hmm.
students were the protagonists of that lesson. And because of the activities that were planned, were not students communicating with you. And this is something that happens so often. You observe a lesson, and you realize that the person who spoke the most in the lesson, let's say, if you go down a little bit, Bruno, to interaction patterns, and then you realize that you have a lot of
Teacher
GW,
student. Yeah.
whole group, WG, by the
Mm-hmm.
way, which is the teacher talking to the students and the students talking all together. For a lesson, come on, let's be realistic. These students they are paying for a course, and they are going to be speaking English for 3 hours at most during the week.
Mm-hmm.
Is that appropriate? Or you want them to work in pairs most of the time, so that they would use most of the time of that lesson to talk?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have a
Definitely.
group of 10 people and they're all working as a whole group the entire time, it's going to be very easy for students who are not as communicative, or students who are I don't want to use the word weaker,
Less
but let's say
proficient.
students, yes, they're less proficient, and then they can't hide behind those, because, well, it's very simple. I will just not talk.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to notice. Now, if I'm talking to one pair, and then I have to speak, otherwise the conversation would go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It would, like, so that's how you make your lesson student centered. Bruno, I know you have things
Yeah.
to add.
Um. I think you said pretty much everything. One way I like looking at this is, who did most of the work during the lesson? Was it you talking a lot and showing slides, as Walter was saying, and playing a video and commenting on the video, or was it students? Right? Because I feel that most of teacher work is before class and after class. During class, you are mediating their work, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As
I
if
was
you're
kind of gonna give you. I was kind of gonna give a spoiler, if I may.
sure, please do.
Yeah, one of the stages of a grammar or a vocabulary lesson is the part in which you analyze language. Are you gonna be explaining all of those?
Mhm.
Is it gonna be you or the students who are gonna be doing the work?
Mhm.
And there's one more way to realize that, to notice that on your own. When you finish the lesson, how tired are you?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Bruno can comment a little more
And of course, take this with a pinch of salt, right? We've all had those those groups of third graders, 25 students in class, 30 students in class, and then you are going to be exhausted even if the lesson was student centered, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's
Now,
there's no
but
way.
if you're teaching a group, if you're teaching a group of 8 students,
Mhm,
well, of course, you still have to know the language that they're going to analyze. You have to explore things, expand knowledge, be there, guide them. You got to do your job.
mhm.
But let's just say that throughout this course, we're not going to be focused on explaining language
Oh no.
in
Yeah.
that stage. But we're going to talk more about that in upcoming lessons of this course.
Yeah.
Yes, and if you don't want to forget those, please subscribe to the channel right
Right.
down below. Yes,
Yeah.
give us a like, share the video with your friends who are teachers. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
I would like to take this time to thank all the 169 subscribers we
Oh
got
yeah, that's great.
at the moment. I am I'm glad. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah. And thank you for
Yeah.
watching our classes. It's great.
Yes, and a tremendous amount of views that we've been getting, which
Yeah.
is much more than we expected when we
Yes, it
started the
is.
channel. Yes,
Yeah.
but we are very happy with that, and we want to thank you for those, right?
Mhm.
But again, please do give us a like because it helps the algorithm to share
Yeah.
things out there. So
To
do
do
it.
its magic. Yeah. And then
Yes.
back to MFP that Walter was saying. Uh, MFP is meaning, form, and pronunciation. So if you're teaching vocabulary, for example, did you teach students what the words mean? Did you teach them how to spell the words and what kind of words they are, how to make their plural, for example?
Yeah.
And
There's
did you teach them?
syntactic
Yeah.
their syntactic form. Is it an
Mhm,
adjective, a
mhm,
noun, that kind of thing?
mhm. And if
It,
you, oh, sorry.
sure, go
Yeah.
on.
And if you taught students how to pronounce the words, and this goes for grammar, vocabulary functions, right? All of them.
Yes. Can I give you an example?
Mhm.
Especially when we talk about pronunciation, a lot of people think about pronouncing words. Grammar really involves pronunciation, right? And it because it changes meaning of things that you say. I'll give you one, for example. If I were you, or if I were you.
Mhm.
So if you're teaching conditionals, you are going to tackle those. You're going
Mhm.
to focus on form. So that's one thing, right?
Mhm.
And it would go in your lesson planning. Oh, maybe we would write it down a little bit. Yes, work on intonation, or one of the many things we addressed in the previous course for
Mhm.
pronunciation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. We talked about scaffolding, right? So, was the support that you gave students throughout the lesson so that they could produce more freely, and more confidently and more accurately through the lesson, and by the end of it, was this enough? Yes or no? And demand high. I really like this one. You know those teachers who say that esse grupo é muito fraco, eles não conseguem, não. Isso aqui é muito difícil para eles, eles não vão dar conta, não, tenho certeza.
Yeah.
This is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you don't believe this is, and this has nothing to do, please, people. I'm one of the less spiritualized persons in the world. This is not regarding energy or chakras. No, no, no. It really happens. If you don't believe students will be able to achieve the aim of the lesson, they're not going to achieve the aim of the lesson because you're going to downplay their abilities and they're not going to get there. So demanding
This
high
doesn't work.
is, do you believe that students are capable of achieving the aim of the lesson and going a bit beyond and then working towards it? You're going to get students to the aim and a bit more, right? So this is why I wrote demand high here, and I created this lesson frame where we're talking about before the lesson, right? This comes from my
Yes.
CELTA, so maybe some
Mhm.
so maybe
I'm,
6 years
I'm
ago.
actually, but I don't think they mentioned the demand
They
high
don't.
approach. Let's say,
Mm-mm.
because that's a very
Mm.
Delta thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, they
but
don't.
good, good. Definitely, it is something that we should always do, which is
Hmm.
to expect more, right?
Hmm.
Why
Hmm.
wouldn't you, right? Like,
Hmm.
are you
Why
teaching?
would you
And
expect
then you get
less,
to those things.
right?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
like, oh yes, I taught them the past simple last week, and no, the present perfect last week, and I taught them that, but God knows what they got from it. Really goes like,
Come on.
I don't remember where I read that, but it was something in the Delta, probably. It
Mhm.
was like, what did you teach last week? All right, I taught them the present perfect. God knows what they
What they
they
learned.
learned.
Like, come
Yes.
on. And folks, just to wrap this up, we didn't cover materials, but it's quite obvious, right? It's the material, the resources you're going to use in class. I believe that this is quite important to write down, even if you're not going to have a whole plan, but just to make sure you don't forget, right? So if you're using a memory game, write that you need the memory game, or slides, or a specific video, or sheets of paper and scissors and
Handouts,
crayons, Play-Doh, right? So
the book.
yeah, the material you're going to use in class, because it's horrible when you plan this amazing lesson using lots of fun resources and you forget to bring the resources, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this helps you not to forget. So uh book, slides, crayons, 10 sheets of paper. Yeah, yeah, for example. Walter, what do you think? I think
I
we're
think we have a
through.
wrap.
I think we do. I think we
Yes.
do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think so.
So
Yeah.
in the next lesson, we're going to be focusing a bit more, a lot more actually, on how to write aims for your lesson. And because we don't teach out of faith, we're also going to look into assessing students so that we can check whether or not, or to what extent students achieved the aim of the lesson, right? So you see that the main aim is directly connected to the assessment of the lesson, and well, vice versa. Yeah.
Yes. Everything is so intertwined.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's supposed to come together in the big picture. It should
Mhm.
become a lesson, right? So when
Mhm.
you look at the main aim, you're probably going to have to look at the final stages of the lesson,
Mhm.
right? Into those, so that you can see that, did you actually plan a lesson that would cover those aims?
Mhm.
So there begs the question,
Yeah. I
right?
remember my first lesson plans, they were just a collection of activities because I was afraid of running out of ideas before the end of the lesson, and then
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
not knowing
Well,
what to do.
I am just gonna say that I don't actually think that's a mistake. It has to do with uh, how confident you are.
Mhm.
But I actually think that if you're a novice teacher, just do it. Just
Yeah.
make sure that you don't really hope you're gonna do all of those.
Uh-huh.
That in the
Mhm.
middle of the doing, presenting that
Mhm.
lesson, you will have to select.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
then comes to you get to
Mhm.
the point. I was like, okay, what is which one of these are actually relevant to
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
reaching these
Mhm.
teaching goals that I have with the
Mhm.
lesson.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. and this is what we're going to see in the next couple classes. So it's not follow, it's like, subscribe, and
It's not Instagram, Bruno.
and by the way, we have a new Instagram account. It's
Yes.
our tag, so it's ELT in Brazil. Do find us there. We're going
Yes.
to be sharing. If you're following, if you're subscribing here, you get all the videos when they're fresh out the oven. But Instagram will help you get in touch with us should you wish to.
Yes. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Instagram. So we're gonna be posting content there as well. We just started the Instagram account last week, I believe, right?
Mostly because we
But
didn't
yeah,
want to lose the handle, right, to someone else. But
we gotta
we're gonna
get
have
this.
content.
We're gonna have content there. But yes, this channel is still the main focus of ELT in Brazil.
Yes.
All right. We'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much for watching this lesson, and we hope to see you in the next ones.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.